The first plenary talk today is by Frédéric Bayard. He's going to talk about on the topological structure of the set of composition operators on the Hilbert space of Dirichlet series. Frédéric, please.
So thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak at this program. So thank you all of you to attend my talk. So we'll speak about the topological structure of the set of composition operators on the Hilbert space of Dirichlet series. So first of all, I will introduce the object, the Hilbert space of Dirichlet series, the composition operators, and then I will explain you what is the problem I want to discuss. So we will work in the RD space of Dirichlet series. This is more or less the same RD space as Emmanuel talked just a few minutes before, but now we don't consider a power series, we consider a Dirichlet series, namely a series sum of n to the power minus s. And you assume that the series has square summable coefficients. So we assume that the sum of modulus of n to the square is finite. And this is, by definition, the norm of f in H. If you take a Dirichlet series in H, it is very easy to see by the Cauchy-Schwarz inequality that it is defined on the half plane C1/2. And it defines there a continuous and holomorphic function on C1/2. And C1/2 is just the half plane of complex number whose world part is greater than 1/2. So you are not defined here on a disk, but you are defined on the half plane. And H is a reproducing kernel Hilbert space. If you take W in C1/2, then the scalar product of F with K of W is equal to F of W, with KW of S is the zeta function evaluated at S plus W bar. So this is what we need for the moment about H. We will discuss about composition operators on H. So first of all, I will call you the definition of a composition operator in a more general context. So let H be a Hilbert space of holomorphic functions defined on the same domain U. And consider a self-map of U, holomorphic self-map of U. The composition operator with symbol phi is defined by C phi of F is equal to F composed by phi for any F in H. And we ask, when does C phi belong to L of H? When does C phi define a bonded composition operator on H? On H2 of the unit disk, the answer is easy because this is always the case. This is the famous Littlewood subordination principle, which is based on the subharmonicity. What happens on the RD space of Dirichlet series? So I restrict myself to H, the RD space of Dirichlet series, and I consider a function phi from the half plane C1/2 into C1/2. And if we want to know when C phi belongs to L of H, we see immediately that we should have two conditions with different nature. First of all, we will have an arithmetical condition, because now what you want is to get a Dirichlet series, because you want to stay in H, when you compose by phi. So phi cannot be any holomorphic function. It should satisfy something so that F composed by phi is a Dirichlet series when you start with F, a Dirichlet series. And you will need also an analytical condition because F composed by phi has to belong to H, so it has to have square summable coefficients. And the problem of determining bonding composition operators on H has been solved 22 years ago by Gordon and Edelman in a very nice paper. So you start with a function phi from C1/2 into C1/2 analytic. And C phi defines a bonded operator on H if and only if the two following conditions are satisfied. First of all, phi of S should be equal to C0 of S plus psi of S, where C0 is a non-negative integer, which will be called later the characteristic of phi, and psi of S is a Dirichlet series. So this is the arithmetical condition here. This is what is needed to get one here. You need that phi is as a linear term. C0 of S is a linear term, but with C0 a non-negative integer, it would not be what you want. It should be a non-negative integer. And psi of S should be a Dirichlet series. So this is the first part, the arithmetical condition. Now the analytical condition, you need that phi converge uniformly in C epsilon for every epsilon positive, and has the following properties. If C0 is equal to 0, then psi should map C0 into C1/2. And if C0 is bigger than 1, then either psi is equal to 0 or psi maps C0 into C0. And in particular, what is strange at this time of my talk is that your map phi, at the beginning, it's only defined on C1/2, and it's natural to define it on C1/2 because it's the natural place where the function in H are defined. But in fact, it extends to C0. So there is something which is strange at this time. I will explain later why this C0 comes into play. And the other point, what is important here, is that you have here two different conditions, provided C0 is equal to 0 or C0 is bigger than 1. And in fact, you will consider the two cases, zero characteristic and positive characteristic, differently at many places with different proofs. Okay. So we will denote by G the set of functions satisfying the assumption of the Gordon and Edelman theorem, and by C of H the set of composition operator on H. And the main question that with my co-authors we have tackled is to know what can be said about the topological structure of C of H. More precisely, we would like to answer the following questions. When do two composition operators, C phi1 and C phi2, belong to the same component of C of H? When there is a... We would like also to know when our two composition operators, C phi1 and C phi2, equal modulo some compact operator. And we have the same question, but just not considering the difference of two composition operator, but considering a linear combination of arbitrary many composition operator. When is a linear combination of composition operators equal to some compact operator? The starting point for this investigation was the following result of Shapiro and Sundberg, which was also the starting point of the same kind of investigation, but on the hard space of the disk. And this theorem asserts that the set of compact composition operators is an arcwise connected set in C of H2 of D, the set of composition operators on H2 of the unit disk. So very, very quickly, you realize that such a theorem cannot be true on H. Why? Because of the characteristic of your symbol. Just let me show you two very simple symbols of composition operator. P1 of S is 2S plus 10 plus 2 pi to the power minus S, and Phi2 of S is 3S plus 10 plus 2 to the power minus S. This defines compact composition operators on H, no problem. But it's natural to conjecture that they do not belong to the same connected component of C of H, because here you have a 2 here, and here you have a 3. And if you say you want an arc between C phi 1 and C phi 2, you have to go from 2 to 3, but staying in integers. And of course, it's not naturally possible. But you have to make this precise, and you make this precise with the following proposition. If to a composition operators you associate its characteristic, then this defines a continuous map from C of H into the set of non-negative integers. And so with that, you realize that Cphi1 and Cphi2 cannot be in the same connected component of C of H. And the proof of this proposition is not difficult, not so easy, but not very difficult. It's say an arithmetical proof essentially, which is based on the coefficients of f composed by phi1 and f composed by phi2 for f of s equal to p to the power minus s, with p a prime number, and phi1 and phi2 two symbols with different characteristics. So I will not give you the details of this proof, but I can mention that it can be extended to many spaces of Dirichlet series. There is nothing really special with H here. Okay. So now, when you have done this, you have proved this, and in view of the Shapiro and Sundberg theorem, the natural question is what happens if you consider the set of compact composition operators with a fixed characteristic. And in that case, the Shapiro-Sundberg theorem becomes true. So if you fix some C0 in N, the set of compact composition operators with characteristic equal to C0 is arcwise connected. To prove this theorem, we will have to further investigate the properties of H and of its elements. And okay, this is I will recall you here some facts coming back to the paper of Edelman, Lindquist, and Zape, where the space H was introduced. So let us consider T infinity, the infinite polydisk, the infinite polycycle, sorry. Namely, the set of sequences Z equals Z1, Z2, and so, with modulus of Zn equal 1 for all n. And the infinite polydisk can be identified with the dual group of Q plus by defining the value of a character at the prime numbers. If you consider chi a character of Q plus, you just need to know the value of chi of 2, chi of 3, and so on to know the value of chi everywhere. And so with that, you can identify the infinite Pauli cycle with the dual group of Q plus. Now, for say a character in T infinity and F, a Dirichlet series in H, define F chi of S is the sum over n of an chi of n to the power minus s. So you have replaced an by an chi to chi n. And you have the following result. If you consider two Dirichlet series in H, say small f and capital F, the following are equivalent. There is a sequence of vertical translate. Here you consider vertical translate of F, such that this sequence converges to capital F uniformly on compact subsets of the half-plane C1 over 2. And this is the same as to say that capital F is equal to some F chi for some chi in the infinite Pauli cycle. And that's why we say that the function F chi are called vertical limit functions of F, because they can be seen as uniform limits of a compact subset of C1 over 2 for vertical translate of F. Okay. Now, the function F chi have a very nice property, in fact. It turns out that if you fix any F in H, then for almost all chi in the infinite Pauli cycle, almost all is relative to the R measure on the infinite Pauli cycle, the function F chi converges in C0, in C0. Not only in C1 over 2, which is the case for any function in H, but it converges in C0. Moreover, this function admits radial limits almost everywhere on the imaginary axis. F chi of it can be defined as the limit of F chi of sigma plus it for almost all t in R. And the norm of F can be computed thanks to this double integral. The integral over the Pauli cycle, the integral over R of F chi of it to the square, d mu of t, dm of chi, where mu is any probability measure on R. So this is very important property of function in H. In some sense, this can be compared with the fact that if you take a function in the RD space of the disk, you can compute its norm either by looking at the coefficients or by looking at the integral on the cycle. And here you have to consider a double integral on the imaginary axis and on the Pauli disk, on the Pauli cycle, and with any probability measure mu on R. So this can be compared. This is the way you can compute the norm of an element in H by an integral. But you cannot compute directly using value of F. You have to introduce the vertical limit F chi. And this part here says also, this C0 here explains why in when they characterize the composition operators on H, Edelman and Gordon found that the function phi, the symbol phi, should extend to C0 because of F chi, because for almost of chi, F chi converges in C0. And moreover, you have the following link between C phi and C phi of F and C phi of F chi. More precisely, if you fix phi, a symbol, you may define p chi of is equal to C0f plus psi chi. So for a symbol, you don't change the linear parts, but you take the vertical limit of the Dirichlet series pi, of the Dirichlet series part. And if you consider f composed by phi chi is equal to f chi to the power C0 composed with phi chi. Okay. So this is what we need really on H. And so let me sketch the proof of the theorem. Says that the set of compact composition operators with characteristic equal to some C0 is arcwise connected. So you start with two compact composition operators on H with the same characteristic. Therefore, phi0 is equal to C0 of S plus psi 0, and phi1 is equal to C0 of S plus psi y. And if you want to draw an arc between phi0 and phi1, the most natural idea is to draw a line, in fact, and to define phi of lambda is equal to C0 of S plus 1 minus lambda psi 0 plus lambda psi 1, or lambda between 0 and 1. And what you ask is, you ask if this lambda is associated to C phi of lambda is continuous. And you ask also if each C phi of lambda is compact. I will not discuss the last part, which is not difficult, but I will try to show you why the map is continuous. So you fix f in H, and you want to estimate the norm of C phi lambda of f minus C phi lambda prime of f. In fact, we will show that the map is Lipschitz, which is more stronger than continuous. So you compute the norm to the square, and you use you use this way to compute the norm. And if you replace f by f composed by phi lambda or f composed by phi lambda prime, you have exactly this. U is any measure. You can take here any measure, it does not matter. Okay. And now, if you use the formula to compute f composed by phi chi, you find this. Okay. Namely, you find a double integral with and the difference of f chi C0 evaluated at 2 points. And so how you can do that? The easiest way is just, okay, to use the derivative of phi of f, sorry. And so pick a bigger than 1/2. You know that if a is bigger than 1/2, there exists some constant CA, such that for all W in the half plane CA, and either in its closure, f prime of W is less than CA of f. It says essentially that if f does not approach the boundary the derivative is uniformly bounded, like on the unit disk. And so if you use this, and if you assume that phi0 of C plus and phi1 of C plus are contained in CA for some a bigger than 1/2, then this is also true for the vertical limit function and for all lambda. And so you have this. What is in the integral can be dominated by CA squared, the norm of f squared, times this difference where f does not come into play now. And if you recall the definition of phi of lambda, then you find that phi of lambda chi of it minus phi lambda prime chi of it is just a small computation. This is lambda minus lambda prime, psi 0 of chi of it minus psi 1 of chi of it. Okay, just a very small computation. And okay, if you apply this in the first line of this slide, so what you find is that the norm of c phi lambda of f minus c phi lambda prime of f to the square is dominated by some constant depending of f times lambda minus lambda prime to the square times some double integral where you have just psi 0 and psi y, which comes into play. And if you take a further assumption, if you assume that psi 0 and psi 1 are bounded, you finally find this, that the map is Lipschitz, and therefore that it is continuous. But you have done several assumptions. You have done this assumption, okay, to prove the theorem. You have done that if psi 0 and psi 1 are bounded, you can do something. And you have also done this assumption. Psi 0 of C plus or C0 is the same. And phi 1 of C0 is contained in CA for some A bigger than 1/2. So if I summarize what we have done that if phi 0 is equal to C0 of S plus psi 0 and phi 1 is C0 of S plus psi 1, satisfies the two following properties that I just discussed in previous slides. Then there is a continuous arc of composition operators between C phi 0 and C phi 1. But of course, this does not solve completely the theorem. And what remains to be done now is to start with any phi inducing a compact composition operator without satisfying this assumption, and to find a continuous arc of compact composition operators between C phi and C phi tilde, or phi tilde, satisfies this assumption. Okay. And okay, and how you do this? You can now choose U phi tilde, and you do this just by translation. In fact, for sigma in 0, 1, you consider the translate, but the horizontal translate now of phi. Phi of sigma is equal to phi sigma of S is phi of S plus sigma. And it's very easy to show that phi 1 satisfies the above assumptions. And the remaining question is to know if the map is a function which maps sigma onto C phi sigma is continuous. And the answer is true. The map is indeed continuous. So I will not show you exactly the proof, but the assumption that C phi is compact is very important. In fact, the proof is done by equicontinuity and compactness, and you really need that. You really need that C phi is compact to do the proof. Okay, and so this closes the proof of the analog of the Shapiro and Sundberg theorem. Okay, but the Shapiro and Sundberg theorem just deal with two compact composition operators. They say that okay, if they have the same characteristic, they are in the same component. But now we would like to get sufficient conditions with two composition operators which are not necessarily compact. And this is the aim of my next two theorems. The first one deals with composition operators with positive characteristics. So you start with phi 0 and phi 1, two composition operators with the same characteristic, and you assume that the characteristic is bigger than 1, bigger than or equal to 1. And okay, you write them as usual. Phi 0 is equal to C0 of S plus psi 0. Phi 1 is equal to C0 of S plus psi 1. And you assume, moreover, that you have the following condition, in fact. You assume that phi 0 and phi 1 are closed in the following sense. If the real part of phi 0 becomes small, then phi 0 minus phi 1 becomes small also. And you have also a technical condition, which is that the derivative of psi 0 and the derivative of psi 1 is less than C. And then if you assume these two conditions, then C phi of 0 and C phi 1 belong to the same component of C of H. So in fact, what does this theorem say? The theorem says that, okay, if you have a composition operator which is not compact, the real part of the symbol should be small at some point. Otherwise, the composition operator is compact. And okay, it says that, okay, if the real part of phi 0 is small, phi 0 and phi 1 has to be closer than the real part of phi of 0, in fact. Okay. And the theorem for positive characteristic, for 0 characteristic, so it has the same flavor, but some different assumption, in fact. Now you start with also two composition operator but with 0 characteristic. And now what you need is that when the real part of phi naught is close to 1/2, but now for 0 characteristic, you know that phi 0 of C0 is mapped onto C1/2. And the smallest value that the real part of phi of 0 can take is 1/2. So the assumption says that if the real part of phi naught becomes close to 1/2, then phi 1 should be close to phi 0. And okay, and here too you have you don't have say a technical assumption on the derivative of psi, but you have a technical assumption here that you have to divide by the modulus of 1 plus phi of 0 squared. But if you take this assumption, which is not difficult to verify, then C phi 0 and C phi 1 belong to the same component of C of H. I won't give the proof, the complete proof of these two theorems because it's rather long, but I will just explain you what is the starting point. The starting point is the same as before. You consider two composition operator. The simplest R between the two composition operator is a line. So you define phi lambda is equal to 1 minus lambda phi 0 plus lambda phi 1. And as before, you want to show that this is Lipschitz. Okay, so you start exactly as before, but now you won't choose the derivative of f because you don't know if phi of lambda is bigger than its real part bigger than 1/2. So you have to be smarter. And now to be smarter, you express this just by an integral. Essentially, this is in French we say théorème fondamental de l'analyse. Okay, one of the main important theorem in analysis. And so you write this. And after that, you use the Jensen inequality. just to put lambda prime minus lambda to the square before, and you have this triple integral now. Okay. And okay, and you want to that this big triple integral here. Okay, this one. You want that it is less than the norm of f square, essentially. And okay, what you need, in fact, is just something like this. It is sufficient to forget the last integral and to show that you have an inequality like this one for any r in 0, 1. And what is this? This is the norm of f, okay? And here, this is not so far for the norm of f prime composed by phi r, with some weight before here. But what is important is that you don't have the same thing on the left and on the right hand side. On the left hand side, you have f prime, and on the right hand side, you have f. And in fact, what you want to prove is that phi 1 minus phi naught, c phi r of f prime, its norm in H, is less than some constant c times the norm of f in H, with the constant c which does not depend on r here. So this is something which is very close to weighted composition operator. To go from to obtain really a weighted composition operator, you have to introduce the following Bergman space of Dirichlet series. So the space A is defined as H, but you have some weight here. And it's very easy to show that F is in H if and only if F prime is in A. And so, if you rewrite this inequality with A, you would just want to prove that phi 1 minus phi 0 times c phi r of f prime, the norm of this in H is less than the norm of f prime in A. And so what you want is to prove, is to study the continuity, bondedness of a weighted composition operator from A to H. The general problem is the following. You have W, a function which is defined from C1/2 into C, is a Dirichlet series. You have phi, an immiscible symbol, and you want to know when WC phi defines a bonded operator from A to H, where WC phi of F is a map W times F composed by phi. And okay, the assumption we have made give an answer when W is equal to phi minus phi 0 and phi equal phi r. In fact, we have studied in general how composition operator can be a weighted composition operator can be bonded from A to H. And the assumption that we have made on phi 0 and phi 1 says that, okay, we can apply this theorem and we can get the result. And just a very small word on the proof, which is different for zero characteristic and for positive characteristic, which explain why we have two different statements. For this 0 equals 0, we reduce to Hardy and Bergman spaces of the unit disk, and we use Carlson measures. And for positive characteristic, we work directly with Dirichlet series in A and in H, and we use Nevanlinna counting functions. Okay. So let me give you some applications. First of all, I will discuss about linear symbols. So I start with Qj, a finite sequence of multiplicatively independent positive integers. And I consider the following symbol, which is called a linear symbol. Phi 0 is equal to C0 of S plus C1 plus the sum from J equal 1 to D, CQJ, QJ to the power minus S. And I assume that this defines a symbol on, this belongs to G, so it defines a bonded composition operators on H. And for delta, sufficiently small, I will consider phi 1, which is a small perturbation of phi naught. And I add delta plus this part, the linear part here, to the square. And okay, what we are able is to prove that C phi 0 and C phi 1 are in the same component of C of H. And moreover, if we start with a symbol with unrestricted range, unrestricted range means that you don't have phi 0 of C0 contained in C epsilon or some epsilon positive. You don't have this. Then you started with a non-compact operator. C phi 1 is also not compact. And the difference is also not compact. And this disproves a conjecture of Shapiro and Sundberg in this setting. The conjecture of Shapiro and Sundberg was that two composition operators belong to the same component if and only if the difference is compact. This conjecture was already disproved in H2 of D by Bourdon and by Morehouse and Tonge. We have a second application, not really of the theorem, but of rather on the method of the theorem, is about compact differences. In fact, to prove that a composition operator is compact, essentially you have to use the same conditions that prove that a composition operator is bounded, but you replace the bigger condition by small o condition. And it's the same here. If you want to investigate compact differences, you have to replace the bigger condition for belonging to the same component by smaller condition. And for instance, for positive characteristic, if you assume that the modulus of phi 0 minus phi 1 is the smaller of the minimum of the real part of phi 0, real part of phi 1, when the real part of S tends to 0, then C phi 0 minus C phi 1 is compact. So you have you also get a result for compact differences. Okay. Now I will finish my talk with the other sense, in fact, the other direction. Until now, we have seen methods to prove that two composition operators belong to the same component. And we would like to prove that two composition operators do not belong to the same component. Until now, we have just one tool. This is a characteristic. Two composition operators in the same component should have the same characteristic. I will try to explain you which problem you have to fight when you want to do this. And the problem is, again, relative to the half planes C0 and C1/2. At the beginning, the symbol phi of a composition operator C phi and H should be defined only on C1/2, but it admits an extension to C0. Okay. And as we have seen, the behavior of phi along the line where part of S equals 0 contains many information on C phi. Okay. But, and this is where the problem appears, if you want to get necessary conditions for compactness, for belonging to the same component, for compact differences, in general, you use reproducing kernel. because you have this this equation C phi star K of W, scalar product with K of W, C phi star of K of W, this is not scalar product here, is equal to K phi of W. So you write the correct thing here. And why this does not work for H? Because the reproducing kernel on H is only defined on C1/2. And it does not see what happens between when the real part is between 1 and 1/2. The reproducing kernel is not enough. It does not see what happens for the boundary, near the boundary of phi. Okay, so we have to investigate other tools. And I will show you just a geometric condition for belonging to the same component. So I start with phi, a function from C0 into C0, B analytic, and let alpha in R. And we will say that phi admits a finite angular derivative at I alpha if both phi and phi prime admit a non-tangential limit at I alpha, with phi of I alpha belongs to IR. So this means that essentially you may define phi at I alpha, that phi of I alpha still belongs to the imaginary axis, and moreover phi prime also is defined as I alpha, say with non-tangential limit, but and the idea is to use angular derivatives, but not directly for the function phi, where phi is a symbol of a composition operator, but for some Westrutic function of the composition of the symbol. So we fix Q, a finite subset of P, the set of prime numbers, and we consider NQ the set of integers which can be factorized using prime numbers in Q. So for phi of S equal to C0 of S plus C1 plus the sum for n bigger than 1 CNN to the power minus S, you consider phi Q of S is equal to C0 of S plus C1 plus the sum of CNN to the power minus S, but just for n in NQ. So you just restrict to integers which can be decomposed with prime numbers in Q. And it turns out that, in fact, if phi is a symbol of a composition operators, phi Q is still a symbol of a composition operator. And we have the following theorem. You start with two composition operators with the same characteristic, and you assume that they are in the same component of C of H. Then, for all Q, a finite subset of prime numbers, if the Westrutic map phi 0 of Q admits a finite angular derivative at some I alpha, at some point of the imaginary axis, then phi 1Q also admits a finite angular derivative at the same point, and we have the same first order boundary data, in fact, which means that you have the same value of the two restricted maps and the same value of the derivative of the restricted maps at I alpha. Okay. This can look a little bit technical, but it's the only way that I know, say, to solve this problem. If I consider phi 0 of S is S plus 1 minus 2 to the power minus S, and phi 1 of S is S plus 1 minus 3 to the power minus S. So almost the same symbol, but here you have the prime number 2, and here you have the prime number 3. They do not belong to the same component of C of H, and it's very easy to prove this by using, say, Q equal 2, for instance. Okay, and yes, thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you indeed. Let's thank Frederick first. Any question for Frederick? There is one in the chat, Fred, if you can read it.
So yes, I can answer the question of Marco, and
yeah,
because the weight 1/n+1 on the unit disk is linked with the derivative of the function. In fact, if you derivate z to the n, you find n times z to the n-1. But if you take the derivative of n to the power minus s, you find logarithm of n times n to the power minus s. So it's why when you consider Bergman spaces, weighted Bergman spaces, you have to consider weights which are powers of logarithm of n, in fact.
Okay. Another one by...
Yes, I see the question. I would say there is a complete characterization of compact composition operators on the Hardy space of Dirichlet series when the characteristic is equal to 0. It's a recent paper of Boevig and Perfect, and they use also a counting function like in the unit disk, which is yes, but it just works when C0 is equal to 0. You also when the characteristic is positive, you don't have a characterization. You have essentially a sufficient condition using a Nevanlina counting function, which works very well and which is very similar to the characterization on the unit disk. But you do not know if the condition is necessary because of the problem that I mentioned just before regarding the reproducing kernels. And so you just have a characterization when your symbol involves a finite number of prime numbers, for instance.
About the topological component of COH that you mentioned, as far as I understood, there is no complete, say, parameterization of this component. Is that true?
No, there is no complete.
So still, in other words, still we do not know fully the structure of these components.
No, we don't know. We don't know fully the structure. Yes.
Okay.
For instance, we don't know. For instance, we don't know if we know if that the set of compact compositional operators with a fixed characteristic is connected, but we don't know if it is a connected component.
Okay. Thank you. Any further question or comment for Frederick? If not, let's thank him again.
Thank you.